Hi everyone. So today's guest is Gerard Fitzgerald, my colleague, and we're going to talk about the lovely topic of GAA, which I have to admit I know very little about, but Gerard's going to fill me in on this. So we're going to start it off with Gerard. Basically, what are the psychological challenges that players who participate in GAA come across?
Cheers, Dave. Thanks for the warm introduction on GAA. I know a lot of people wouldn't understand what it is, so I'll give you just a quick, brief introduction what it is. It's the Gaelic Athletic Association of Ireland, and it's broken into two sports. We call it football here. That's why we call soccer, but it's broken into football, which we kind of, for the listeners, would be the equivalent of like the Aussie rules. We do an international game with Aussie rules with Australia, and then broke into a game like hurling. And your Scottish listeners would associate that with shinty. So it's a Gaelic traditional games in Ireland, and it's been around hundreds of years. But I guess one of the psychological issues I find with the GAA in Ireland would be that it's an amateur sport, broken into 32 counties in Ireland, but played at a professional level. So, and at the county level, it's all fine and grand to have a level of professionalism because they're the top tier players going forward. But to give you a bit of context, I'm from a place called Limerick with a population of 94,000 people. In that 94,000 people, there's 101 clubs in GAA.
Wow, so there's a lot of people play it. It's a very popular sport, yeah.
So you would have on average for the top team of that club 30 players. So it's a lot of players trying to get into that county level of professionalism. And the problem is at a club level, they're trying to play professionally. They're trying to train professionally, eat professionally, live professionally, and still hold down a full-time job, still have family commitments, still have life coming at them full pelt. And at a county level, when you only have a number of 30 players and 101 clubs, how many can realistically reach that level of semi-professional or even professional status in the country?
So are you saying one of the big challenges is helping people prioritize and in effect manage their lifestyles so that they can be the professional in a amateur's body, if you like?
Yeah, I guess people in the GAA world of Ireland don't necessarily have a problem with it. However, with the level of commitment and they know what it takes to play, it's almost an honor to play for your club. I know it's a lot of clubs in Limerick. To give you another bit of context, in Cork, which would have a population of 125,000 people, there's 259 clubs. So, but it's the pride of that, having that badge on your tracksuit top and your tracksuit bottoms. So they don't mind giving that level of professionalism. But where I find the issue runs a little bit deeper is when you have the developmental of kids playing for their clubs, and when you have parents who want them to play for that club and other sports become sacrificed because of it. You know, I'm training to be a sports psychologist now, but I've over 15 years been involved in playing, coaching, and I've heard all sorts of horror stories, like parents would rather their kids go train for their local GA club than go play for a football final or a soccer final or a rugby final. And I feel that kids' development gets stunted, and that leads into adulthood, leads into, giving up certain sports just to kind of just focus on the GA.
So in effect, what we're talking about is like early specialization here, and how I suppose that can overlap into like perfectionist tendencies, can't it? And burnout, and where kids are obviously involved in these sports, but they really just don't want to be there.
Yeah, and I think there is a high burnout rate, and because it's an amateur sport, it's a harder one to tap into. It's a very closed association. We had an issue with the GAA kind of runs sport in Ireland. to a certain extent, that's where sport first initiated in Ireland. There was no soccer. There was rugby came a distant second. It was all just GAA, and the pride of playing for your club really dominates everything. So that burnout rate would fall from I want to be a senior player. Now it goes back to junior, then a junior intermediate, and then before you know it, you have kids coming through that are now 24 having no interest anymore.
That makes sense. And it must be quite difficult for the other sports than the soccer or football.
Sorry, I got you to say soccer.
And rugby as well. I'm guessing, yeah, they'll have their issues, as you mentioned there, if there's a final or big games where players are going to decide to play GAA instead. Yeah,
and I'm very much aware that happens at local rugby clubs, that happens at local soccer clubs, where if you have a really good, young, talented young boy or young girl, that you won't want them to go play other sports. You want them there. It does happen, but I do find with the GAA, and I find it a little bit more concerning because it doesn't have a route towards professionalism. You know, you're not going to be the next David Beckham or the next Johnny Wilkinson. You're not going, like, you will be in your local area, but you won't reach the heights of those great sports people within GAA. So that's why I kind of have a personal preference to say you should be more letting kids develop with other sports.
Yeah, I suppose really if you think about it, like a parent's motivation in this, surely it should be about the fun, the enjoyment side of things, you would think.
Like the thing is, like, you can ask kids at a very young age about what they want, you know, what works for them and what makes them feel happy, what makes them feel engaged in the sport, you know, and they'll tell you. Like, kids are very resilient, you know, and if parents ask, you will find out that your child is the expert in this. They're on the field, they're playing. They'll let you know if they would rather go play a cup final with their friends from school, or would they rather go training with their club. You know, they'll tell you, in my experience.
Yeah, maybe not every child, but yeah, certainly, a lot would. I would agree with that. So I suppose, you know, is there a message for parents at all in this, in terms of how they consider where their priorities lie?
Of course, but I'm all about balance, and I'm very aware that as a parent, it is very hard to bring children to rugby, soccer, GAA, swimming. It's a hard task. Your weekends are taken up no end. Like, so I am very aware that it is very difficult. But if you can open up the channels of communication and be fun with it and just talk and ask, would you like to go here today instead of going there? I would find that would help an awful lot. Like kids develop in a positive and encouraging environment. You know, if we support their autonomy, they will develop, you know. And sometimes, and it goes breached onto a different topic, that if you have an overemphasis on winning and an overemphasis on outcomes, you know, that will have the opposite effect. You know, it's kind of goes hand in hand.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, the outcomes, the winning side of things they're external factors. They're out of your control, more so in a team sport. I just lost my track of thought there. Yeah, that was actually, I was gonna ask the question about, for argument's sake, a child plays GAA, they also enjoy soccer, football. You know, what do you think the advantages are there for that child being involved in both sports?
Well, I think they're very different. You learn different things from different sports and different environments, different friends. You know, it's a different social group for kids to learn. And there's, you know, with the GAA, you would have a very defined demographic of people that would go play GAA. You know, you do have a very fine demographic of people, but with soccer, I say football as well naturally, but with soccer, you have a different demographic. And I think when kids are a certain age, you throw them into everything as much as you can, and something will stick. You know, as a bit of a controversial kind of a topic, I do think this is why Ireland do struggle a little bit in the Olympics. We don't naturally send our kids to do athletics or to do fencing or archery or swimming. We're very not natural at this. It's GAA, rugby, soccer. We're very adamant that that's what we're doing with our children.
Yeah. Well, we'll think about another sport for argument's sake. Then let's say they're into GAA and they're also into like martial arts, you know, karate, that sort of thing. You know, what are the benefits of being a child and and being involved in those sports?
Well, it'll be very different. There'll be very different sports. You know, you have your martial arts, so you'll be learning individually. You have your team sports with GAA, your team cohesion, your leadership. And I find with martial arts, it's such a unique sport. The topics covered, whether it's defending yourself or whether it's how to control your anger, how to control your emotions, would be highly beneficial that you could even carry into GAA and other sports.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. And I suppose one of the other things that stands out for me would be potentially the physical side as a child. How if you are involved in martial arts or boxing or something, you do learn to handle yourself against people of different sizes. So you don't in effect have pecking orders where you worry about the physicality of somebody 6 inches bigger than you or wider than you, anything like that. So it probably it just improves your self-esteem, doesn't it, and fills you with a bit more confidence. Yeah. And as you see, it probably helps you mentioned about emotional control. When you are in those situations where somebody provokes you in a team sport setting, you're probably better able to actually not react to it and just hold your ground and walk away from those situations.
No, for sure. I think we just don't give children, kids, in my opinion, enough credit for their resilience when it comes to sports, when it comes to learning a new skill. There's arguments there between the ages of when kids learn to master their skills, their mastery levels, of whether it's between 7 and 12 or 8 and 13. I'll let the other experts decide where it is. But until then, they're so resilient. I would personally be trying to introduce as much sports and crafts, whether it's acting, whatever the issue is, I would be introducing as much as you could, because they'll take it all in. They're like sponges. They're like a dry sponge, and the more you wet, they'll absorb it all in, and you could strike gold with kids.
Before we wrap up, I've got one more thing around on this sort of topic with kids. So I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts are on a child who perhaps goes through some difficulties, as you say, they resiliently bounce back from things, then they begin learning new ways of coping with the challenges that they've had, and they get themselves into a nice place. Would you look to continue that development so they're continually learning? Because I mean, if we're honest, sport, there's always challenges going to come up against you, isn't there?
Yeah.
Or would you encourage children not to go thinking about too much about the types of challenges that they're likely to face?
I would, if we're just primarily on the stage where kids you're bringing them to certain different sports and activities and they're enjoying it, I would be encouraging them not to think, just enjoy, just take it all in, have fun. First and foremost, fun. If you're having fun, perfect. If you're not having fun, let's try something else. And obviously, as you go through the years and development, and if we're getting into a competition stage of development and we're really good at a certain sport, then there's other factors in play that come in. There's the competitive edge, there's fear of failure, there's all these things that are going to naturally come into the kids' mindset. So I think while they're having fun, stay away from it. But if we're getting towards a competitive edge or competitiveness at a high level, and if they've expressed an interest, in, by all means, go into it 100%.
So yeah, so basically what you're saying is if there is that element of performance there where you're looking to try and develop them and improve them, then yeah, by all means, certainly look at different strategies to be able to help them.
Yeah, 100%.
Right. Is there anything to add at all on GAA then?
I'm very conscious of the fact that I kind of went in on parents there and not appreciating the work parents do. Like at the end of the day, like parents are the providers of a young kids athletes performance. If it wasn't for the parents, they wouldn't be going training, they wouldn't be going to these things. So I don't want to be coming across as twisting a knife in on the parents. Like if it's not for the parents being open and willing to give up 8 hours on their Saturday and 7 on their Sunday, that kids wouldn't even be in the position to play sports. So I'm aware it's a very hard task to always try to fit everything in, but in Ireland especially, if we could just have the mindset of not having a closed mindset of GAA or nothing, and have a more of an open mindset on what your little boy or your little girl wants to do, rather than we're just going to our local club this Sunday. Yeah. So that's the kind of message I'm trying to get. I kind of got a little bit diluted with in the middle, but that's the kind of message I'm trying to get through.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I'm a parent as well, and yeah, you end up being a glorified taxi service, not just on a weekend, midweek as well, and you struggle for time for yourself. It can be quite stressful on some days. So yeah, I get you there, and yeah, I'm sure that the viewers, listeners will understand. Well, yeah, a big thanks for your time, Gerard, and
appreciate it.
There'll be more coming in the near future as well for people. We'll be having some regular conversations about this sort of stuff.
Great, thanks.